Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This afternoon, we have with us Mrs. Sandra Samuels OBE RGN. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mrs. Samuels. Sandra, a former NHS manager and company director, became the City of Wolverhampton's 163rd Mayor and first citizen in 2022. Sandra Samuels OBE RGN became the city's first mayor of African Caribbean heritage in almost 20 years of its political history. And
200 years.
Sorry, my apologies, 200 years. Thank
200 you. Years. It would have been wonderful if it was 20.
Oh, thank you very much for that.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yes, 200 years of its political history and only its 11th female mayor. She stated one of the highlights of the mayoral year was working in partnership with over 50 of Wolverhampton's schools and their young people, the future custodians of our city. Having spent over 25 years in national, regional, and local politics, 13 of those years on central government's National Policy Forum, the policy-making body of government, and delivering 3 winning general elections manifestos, 2000 to 2013, 2013, and 4 years on the LGA as Wellbeing Ambassador for West Midlands and the West Country. Sandra, a former member of the Council's Cabinet and its longest serving elected female member, spent 8 years on the Council's executive. Sandra led and managed portfolios in 3 service areas: public health and well-being, adult social care, care provisions, and corporate governance. Working at times up to 17 hours per day as she continues to deliver on her clinical commitments as the operating theatre manager in neurosurgery, Queen Elizabeth West Birmingham Hospital. Sandra, with her team, successfully led the transfer of public health in Wolverhampton from the Primary Care Trust into local government and 2 staff members across with 50+ NHS contracts. She went on to set up the Shadow Board and chaired Wolverhampton's first health and wellbeing partnership following policy change in health and care legislations 2013. Interviewed and appointed the City's Council's first Director of Public Health. Sandra's most challenging portfolio in Council Cabinet was adult social care, as she led and delivered on over 30% of the Council's overall annual budget, while successfully and sympathetically making 2.5 million efficiency savings across services provisions, so preventing expenditures of our Council's much needed reserves. Appointed to deliver on the corporate governance portfolio in 2019, Sandra prioritized and led the team, whom successfully implemented the Council's new policy on flexible working to include benefits for the new parents going through adoption process and foster care. She later chaired an interviewed panel and appointed a new director to the governance portfolio. Sandra was honored by our late Queen Elizabeth II with an OBE in 2015 for services to politics and local government, stating how shocked and humble she was on receiving her letter from Buckingham Palace. Sandra chaired and successfully led with her team New Deal for Communities, a 10-year, 53.5 million regeneration project in All Saints and Blakenhall, Wolverhampton. Sandra is a qualified registered nurse, whom is theatre trained, ENT and ophthalmic trained, and holds a teaching certificate in nursing. A businesswoman, co-founder, and one of 3 company directors on the board of Wolverhampton's Heritage Centre Limited since 2012, an African Caribbean Resource Centre, a social enterprise. Mrs. Samuels.
Is that really me?
That's amazing. Absolutely
Thank
amazing.
you very much.
What can I call you throughout this this journey? Would you be comfortable with me calling?
I'm comfortable with you. Call me Sandra. That's fine.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
This is absolutely amazing. Your portfolio, and I'm sure that's not everything. There's more, but you know, there's so much to that there.
Yes, I know. I feel as if I've been working all my life.
It shouldn't be just OB, it should be Dame Samuels. This is absolutely fantastic. So what I normally do is thank people for agreeing to participate in this particular project of the Forgotten Generation, which is a visual interview. Yes. I do talk to a lot of people, but there are some people who don't want to do that. So I'm saying thank you very much for agreeing to do
Not at all. Thank you for having me.
Really, really appreciate that. So a part of this interview is that I'm going to go through a few questions and we just carry on and see how it develops. I'm going to start off with the first question as to where you were born.
So I was born in Montego Bay, Jamaica, West Indies.
Nice. That name resonates with a lot of people straight away.
Oh, straight away, yes. That wonderful, wonderful island.
yeah, fantastic. Mm-hmm. So, have you got siblings?
I have got siblings, yes. I have 4 sisters.
4 sisters?
One older than myself, my eldest sister, Marcia. And I have 3 which are younger. I have a sister, Laverne, who actually lives and works in Canada. She lives there with her husband. My other sister, Andrea, who lives in London, and my other sister who lives in Wolverhampton here. And I have 1 brother. So my parents had 5 girls and 1 boy.
Wow. And were you all born in Jamaica?
Was I born in Jamaica?
Were you all born in Jamaica?
No, 3 of us, my older sister and my younger sister and myself were born in Jamaica.
Wow.
And then my mother and father, once they immigrated to England, had a further 3 children. So 2 of my sisters and my brother were born here. My brother is the youngest, but yes,
okay.
And oh gosh, he's well over 40 now.
Wow. So, what made you come to England then? I mean, this is a question that I suppose a lot of people.
What made me come to England?
Yes.
I suppose my parents sent for me. So my father came to England to the back end of 1959, 1960, and my mother joined him in 1961. We all 3 of us as siblings were left with my grandparents, my father's mother and father,
right,
and granddad. And we were looked after by my grandparents. I was age 10 when I left Jamaica to join my parents. So my parents migrated here because they obviously wanted a better life for their family.
Oh, right.
And so they came to England, and once they'd set up home, they then sent for us.
How did you feel when your parents left you then? I don't know what age you were.
Well, I think I was about 2, so I don't think there were that many. It didn't really resonate. It was later on in life when you start to ask questions, or well, where's mom and dad? Because then you assume, and then your grandparents start to tell you that mom and dad has gone to, I think the word was foreign.
Yes.
That's Jamaicans. That's what they use. They don't say England. They say foreign. Your mom and dad is gone to foreign.
Yeah. And later on, did that? I don't suppose that meant anything to you. What did that really mean to you in England?
England. Well, England was, I mean, when they talked about England, when Jamaicans talked about England as I got older, and I was still in Jamaica, they would talk about England being paved with gold, the streets of England being paved with gold, and it was the country of milk and honey, but also that it was the mother country.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, we got independence in Jamaica in 1962. But then, the Queen had been the head of state. So the Queen had visited Jamaica. I think it was 1964 or something. No, the Queen visited Jamaica before we got independence.
Yes.
Because my father and I was having that conversation. So
right.
I felt that I was going to somewhere that's going to be warm and not warm as in weather, but warm as in embracing and welcoming. And, completely the opposite when I got here. Completely the opposite.
Yeah. One question I want to ask is, how did you feel when you met up with mom and dad again? Do you
know what? When I came off the airplane and saw, I didn't really recognize my dad as such, because he didn't look the same as he did when he left England. Because don't forget, they would have been sending photographs to us and whatever. But very embracing. I think my mom wasn't at the airport, but obviously dad met us and
right.
His friend who came with a minibus. Obviously, there was three of us, and there was I keep shaking the table. There was three of us, and obviously suitcases and stuff. So I was just excited, excited, but a little bit apprehensive, because as we were driving back to because we were in London. So as we were driving back and saw all the smoke coming out of the chimney, I thought the houses were on fire. I know I mentioned that, and people laughed, but it was true, because in Jamaica, you don't have chimneys in Jamaica.
That's right.
Yes, but I was very excited to be here. But loved it when I met up with mom, and there were family members at home waiting to greet us. So yeah.
Oh, great. So you said us. So
myself and my two sisters. So all three of us traveled to England.
Okay.
Over 4,000 miles. And we were looked after by a air hostess who is usually responsible for us during the flight. So my uncle and my grandfather took us to the airport and then put us on to the flight. And then we were met at the other end by my father and Mr. Spence, the gentleman was called. I still remember his name now. My parents' friends, yes.
It's like an indelible journey, isn't it? Whatever happens,
yes,
that memory
stays with you
forever. So where did you actually go to from Heathrow Airport?
From Heathrow Airport, we came straight to Wolverhampton. So obviously my dad and Mr. Spence and Mr. Irvin, I think because he brought friends with him. So we just came straight to Wolverhampton. They drove directly to Wolverhampton, and my parents then lived on Purcell Road. So we came to Bushbury in Wolverhampton.
How long did you think that it took you to sort of, I wouldn't say immerse, but sort of acclimatize, whatever the word is?
Acclimatize. It took a long time. It took many years. Many years, because I think obviously we'd gone to school when we got in to England, so we were still of school age, but the three of us had gone to school. But it was while we were at school, because there weren't many African Caribbeans. I think I was probably one of 5 in the class of about 34, 35 children. But at the time, the children were just very cruel.
Were they?
I was coming from school in Jamaica, where the majority were people and children that look like me. But not just that. We went to a Catholic school in Jamaica. So we were actually taught by nuns prior to coming to England.
Oh, right.
So it was all very different once we came here. And I think because kids were so cruel, and they'd call you names and they'd pull your hair and just that. So it took us a little while to settle, but we had parents who were very proud parents, but also parents who were very encouraging. And I remember a gentleman from Wolverhampton writing a book about us and my family, because they'd been in England for the time they had. And I actually said to them, Mr. Campbell, that my mom used to say to me, words are wind and blows unkind. So let them say what they want to.
Okay,
And I
okay.
still use that terminology to yes, I
And that,
still
and that
do.
that was one way of coping with whatever you had to cope with at the
Yes,
time.
yes, yes.
Did you find that that lasted throughout your schooling years?
Yes, it lasted throughout my schooling. I stayed on till the sixth form because my father insisted I wanted to leave with the rest of my friends to go and get a job. And my father, said, no, you're staying on. So I
Oh,
stayed on till the sixth form. And things got better. It improved. Because
yes,
don't
yes.
forget, as they got used to you being there and your
Mm,
presence.
mm,
But yes,
yeah.
it did improve.
So at school then, there you are coming towards the end of your schooling years. Did you
Mhm.
have something in mind that you wanted to do?
Yes, my mum was a nurse. But I used to like the old idea of dressing up and wearing high heels and things. My mum still used to remind me about that. But my mum was a nurse, so I did when I left school at 17,
Mm,
did an access course to law because I was interested, and I used to. I used to like the old debating issues and stuff. And my mother says I talked an awful lot. I was always talking. I was always talking, asking questions, inquisitive, the word she used to use.
yeah.
But yes, I left school, wanted to be a nurse, and so because I'd done biology and I'd done English, but English language and English literature was something that I was very much interested in and very keen on. So yes, I went off. I did my first degree at Coventry, and then I did my second degree at Wolverhampton University. When I went to Coventry, Coventry was still a polytechnic then.
Right, right, right.
But
What was
yes,
that degree then? What was that degree, your first degree?
so I did a degree in nursing, and
Okay.
then I did a second degree in my MBA, which is the Masters in Business Administration.
All right. Okay.
Hmm.
That's fantastic. So that was a good solid start
Yes,
to
it was a good
academically to
solid
your
start. But
mm,
I'd always had the idea in the back of my head that I wanted to do something to do with law, but obviously never progressed. I
mm.
got engaged at the age of 18,
All right. Okay.
and I got married at the age of 23.
Wow.
And I reverse on that. I got engaged at the age of 18, but I remember leaving school, obviously leaving the sixth form at 17,
Mm,
Mr. Campbell. And when I was 17, obviously, when I met my now husband,
mm.
and coming home to tell my mom about the person that I'd met at the school concert and wanted him to meet my father.
All
And
right.
so when we brought him home at the age of 17 and a half, my father said, my father wouldn't meet him. My father says, tell him to come back when he's 18. And I
Is
still
that what he said?
remember it now. My husband, my then boyfriend was petrified. But then my mom smoothed things over. We got engaged at 18. I bought
Right.
my first property at 22, and I got
Wow.
married at 23.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Hmm.
So looking back then, there's quite a development between your years of leaving school, going
Yes.
to university, and
Mhm.
getting married. There were quite a
Yes.
few.
Yes. Which is
Wow.
obviously what my mother wanted, and my parents obviously wanted to say, I still now think that the best gift any parents can give a child is a good education, because
Yeah.
then you're set up. My mom used to
Yeah.
say, then you're set up for life.
Yes, yes,
Then,
yes.
especially as a girl child, you then become independent, you
Right,
know.
right.
But so proud of my Jamaican heritage, and just wouldn't change it for anything, because I think that's
Fantastic.
where the foundation was.
Yes, because that's one of the questions I normally ask people, whether they see themselves, sort of
Mm,
heritage wise. And I do get a different response accordingly. Some people say, I'm English, or I'm English, Caribbean or Jamaican. I get different answers.
do
So,
you?
yes, I do. So,
But I'm an African Caribbean first
mhm,
and foremost,
mhm,
and I
mhm.
think as the mayor of Wolverhampton also, I'd say yes, I'm a Black woman, and yes, I'm living in England,
Mm,
but I am an African Caribbean. I am Caribbean. I am of Caribbean heritage.
love it. Absolutely great.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So you spent quite a few years in the NHS, 40 years, I believe.
40 years in the National Health Service, yes.
Wow. What was that like? Because, I mean, that's
Um,
not necessarily a smooth road, is it?
it wasn't a smooth run at all. I spent 40 years there. It took me quite a while to get promoted within the National Health Service. And I think that was just the general challenges that as Black staff who wanted to progress into management. So I know that I wasn't the only person that was facing those sort of, and I like to call them challenges, because when you call them challenges, then there are issues that can be overcome, isn't it?
Yes.
So I trained initially, even though I had the required qualifications when I went into nursing. So they encouraged me to go into enrolled nurse training. And I trained initially as an enrolled nurse, wasn't a problem, because my director was telling me that it would be quicker because it would be 2 years instead of 3 years as a registered nurse. But then once I realized, after training for 2 years as an enrolled nurse, that it then limited your opportunities to go into management.
Okay.
So they'd obviously changed the goalpost, and so I managed to get onto a conversion course to convert my enrolled nurse into a registered nurse.
Right. And was that easy to get onto?
No, it wasn't. It was when I'd been in the NHS for about 4 years, about 3 years, when I decided to take a grievance out against the director of nursing.
Really? I bet that went down very well.
Oh my gosh, I became one of the most unpopular nurses in the NHS. But then I could see other nurses who had less qualification than I did and had been in nursing less time, were obviously getting on this conversion course. And I thought, well, so I went to see a union. I mean, and I'm saying, well, something's not quite right. I'm far more qualified and far more experienced than so and so. And I took out a grievance against the trust. And they said, don't forget that if you challenge the system, there are consequences. But I got onto my conversion course. And I won my case and got onto the conversion course. And they had to get me on a course within 12 months. So I was sent then to Wolverhampton to do my conversion training, Wolverhampton, New Cross.
Wow, that's fantastic. And from then on, that gave you the platform to progress.
It gave me a platform to progress. I then later, during the NHS, during my 40 years term, encountered a further 6 grievances. And they're usually when you want to apply for further advancement. So I took up my second grievance, I think, when I applied for a sister's post. So that is the sort of post that you would get to be in charge of a ward.
Yes.
And I kept, I got good references, but I kept being turned down. And you find that people who were less qualified than you. So then I took out the second grievance. And the third one was also when I got further and wanted then to advance again. So most of those grievances, and you find that there were. So as the manager in the operating theatre, I'll give you a scenario. I was the manager in the operating theatre at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and decided to step down to go to the bathroom because I was doing ear, nose and throat surgery. And so I was carrying out a major operation, which I think, assisting the surgeon, lasted about 4 or 5 hours.
That's a long time.
Yes, it is a long time. And I needed to step away from the table to go to the bathroom and then ask the surgeon for permission, because naturally you have to. And the surgeon agreed that I could step down. Well, within days, the manager, who I didn't really get on with, the senior manager, decided to take a grievance out and said that I'd step away from the table without permission and I'd put the patient at risk.
Really?
And things like that would allow me then to lose my number to practice as a nurse. So
that's
then
very serious accusation. Yes.
yes. So I then fought the case. And I think my husband ended up having to pay out about £10,000 because we had to get a barrister to actually protect me and my qualifications. Because I think because I was a very vocal individual, what they wanted to do, obviously, was have me removed or damage my credibility or my character. So, there were those difficulties, but then there is, for me, a huge positive here, Mr. Campbell, because even though I'd had 7 disciplinaries or grievances, call them what you want, in the NHS, I look back now, and then at the end of that, I became because I'd worked so often with the unions, they said, well, Sister Samuels, have you thought of becoming a representative, a union rep? And I well, no, I hadn't, but what does it entail? And for me, the irony here was that those very individual senior managers who had disciplined me all through my years had to sit across the table from me and negotiate with me, because then I became a union rep who was representing other nurses who were encountering. So there's a huge plus there for me,
How did you find that particular role? Because you were an activist, community activist, trade union official, and the school governor. All those things. That's very active within the community.
Very active, because I felt that, I believe it was Mahatma Gandhi that said, you have to be the change you want to see. There were other nurses who were encountering difficulties and disciplinaries within the system. And I still think that these institutions like the NHS uses grievance and disciplinaries as a form of punishment for people of color. And I feel that in order for me to do anything to help here, I had to get involved. And so I got involved as a union rep and felt that because when I needed support, it is also very difficult, Mr. Campbell, to explain to someone how you're feeling who doesn't look like you, and perhaps doesn't believe in the same values as yourself. And so I would have loved to have had another person of color sitting across from me when I was encountering. So I felt that I needed to do this so that others who were coming up after me wouldn't have to experience the same. And so there was a lot of satisfaction in going through the grievance with other nurses and winning the case. There was always, for me, a sense of achievement. So talking about me working as a community activist, I was also out in the community because I became a community activist far, quite a while before I became an elected councillor. And so it was while I was in the community that then I was asked if I'd thought of becoming a school governor. At that time, I didn't know what a school governor was, being honest. And so yes, and then when they said, it's a person who gets involved and help to change policies that will benefit people, people of color, but just benefit children in general. And I thought, well, it would have been nice if there was someone actually sitting on the governing body when I was a child growing up to try and influence the policies. And so I became a school governor and spent 13 years as a school governor, and ended up also spending 6 years as chair of governors. So yes,
that's fantastic. I listened to you there, and there's quite a journey that you've just taken us through there, and the journey of the different disciplinary, as in 7, I believe that you said, that in itself is quite a learning curve.
It's quite a learning curve, but also it made me very ill. And I think people don't realize sometimes that you're traumatized when you encounter a lot of these difficulties. I was off for 6 months. One of the downside is that my GP had to then put me on antidepressants because I couldn't understand why these things kept happening to me. But then I realized later on that, whenever you challenge the system, you have to be prepared to encounter the consequences. And one of the consequences were them trying to discipline me.
Yes.
If I spoke out and spoke up, and I felt that, if I was a manager, let me manage. There were, I call them slights, where they would make snide comments, they would do things that would obviously offend me. And so I felt that I needed to speak up. And I said to you that I was very vocal in the NHS, but
Yes.
I also made sure that I knew my trade.
That's essential. That's
I
essential.
knew my trade, yes.
The other question I would ask now is that, do you think much has changed since then in comparison to now?
Oh, I think much has changed, because when I look on and I look to somewhere like New Cross in Wolverhampton, who has 5 senior matrons, and they're all people of color. And I've used them on my Facebook page as my profile picture in the past. Things have changed, but I think we still have a long way to go.
And I believe I really believe that some of the changes is because of what you've done.
Yeah, people like myself, but also don't forget, when people like myself attempt to make those changes, I did a lot of mentoring. So there will be other nurses coming on and thinking, well, if Sandra can do it, I can. So
Absolutely.
I always feel that what we do as individuals has great impact on those that are following on. The same way, my father was a fighter, my mother was a fighter. My mother was a nurse, and she used to talk about the difficulties she had while she was nursing. My father was a supervisor for British Rail, and had worked for British Rail for 33 years before he retired. But I remember when my father used to come home and talk to us about the fact that he'd been promoted and the difficulty he had, because some of the men who we would ask to do things wouldn't want to do it because it was a black man asking them to do it.
Isn't that something?
So those difficulties are there. So I'm standing on shoulders of, I like to refer to our Windrush generation, because as an individual, I'm second Windrush generation.
Yes.
I'm standing on the shoulders of those pioneers who have achieved so much. And, people like my mom and dad used to keep their heads down, remember, because they had to feed their children and pay their mortgage.
Yes.
And so they didn't want to rattle the cages.
No.
Wherein now, the position I am at, and I'm not reliant on anyone out there, I then can assist in making those changes.
That's fantastic. And you're talking about achievements. Tell us about becoming the mayor of Wolverhampton.
Oh gosh, yes, the mayor of Wolverhampton. So I've been in politics. I'd been in politics for about 20 years, 25 years fully, because I did local and national. And my light bulb moment was I say to people, as a NHS manager, we struggled back in the 80s. And that was because we struggled to get funding to employ extra staff, Mr. Campbell, but not just extra staff, to buy new equipment, to buy new instruments. And so we were struggling because instead of the government at the time, who was Margaret Thatcher, investing in the NHS, and apparently we should have been investing something like 5% in the National Health Service. They were investing as government about 2.5%, between 2 and 2.5%. So the NHS just kept going further and further and further, and it was literally ran into the ground. So in about 1997, we had a general election, and this very bright young man came on board, telling us that he was going to invest in the National Health Service, he was going to build new hospitals. And I thought, well, that sounds promising. it was the Labour Party that had kept coming to power. So I
All
then
right.
decided that I wanted to get involved to help to do this in any way I possibly can. And I joined the Labour Party. So I joined the Labour Party in 1998. Within 6 months, I'd become the Labour Party secretary for my local branch. Within 12 months, I'd become the National Policy Forum member. So they'd literally nominated me and voted for me to become a representative for the West Midlands. And then
Wow.
for 18 months, I was running for a parliamentary seat. So
Oh my
it was a bit of
goodness.
a whirlwind. But I tell you why, though, Mr. Campbell, I thought, because I was someone with tangible NHS experience.
Yes.
It wasn't just coming from a book, my decision. So I ended up going on to the National Policy Forum, which is the policy-making body of government, and spent 13 years on there, which is why I talk about the three winning manifestos. You know,
Yes.
Labour's poster girl, they used to say. And I think the thing that they hadn't had a very vocal and a very vibrant Black person on board. Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with the Labour Party, but I felt that I had run for Parliament and ran for Parliament in some way very, very rural. So I was selected and nominated and selected to stand in North Shropshire as a parliamentary candidate for the Labour Party.
That again is quite a different experience, isn't it?
It is. So, I was sort of, for me, pushing back those boundaries because it's something. When I became the National Policy Forum representative for the Labour Party, I was the first Black person from the West Midlands.
Wow. So
that had done that.
Another first.
Yes, another first.
So your mayoral experience as the first.
So the mayoral experience as the first. Yes, let's roll this back.
Yes.
So after 20, I think it was 20 years, I'd been in the council, but I've never really seen anyone of my color or my culture becoming mayor. So in the 20 years I'd been there, and I thought about it, I'd thought about it long and hard, and I'd asked questions as to, well, why hasn't there ever been an African Caribbean mayor? But to be a mayor, you have to have done 12 to 15 years in the council. So you have to be a senior councillor in order to become the first citizen. And then it's and it is the councillors within the city council that has to vote for you to say yay or nay. And we had 60 councillors, not all of them Labour councillors, but we had 60 councillors. So I then, made it known to the legal department that I might be interested. And I did a lot of research around who had been mayors in the past, but also who had been Black councillors in the past. And prior to me coming on the council and I ran for council in 2001, my first attempt, there was a former councillor who was Professor Mel Shivanis, but she lasted one term. And what I mean one term, you have to be re-elected. So I've been re-elected 7 times in order to retain my council seat. So Mel Shivanis had been a councillor and the first Black councillor in Wolverhampton, but then she lost her seat. She was in the constituency of Enoch Powell. And so between Mel losing her seat and me coming on the council, it had been 25 years. There was a 25 years gap. There were Caucasians on the council. There were Asian members on the council, but never in African Caribbean. So when I got onto the council, for me, my main responsibility was to try and remain there.
Right.
Everyone else, even after me, has lasted for 4 years or lasted for 3 years or maximum 8 years. I've lasted in the council for nearly 20 years, which meant that I was eligible to become the mayor of the city. It is a big role. It's an honorable role, but it's
Yeah.
also a role where you are responsible for the city. You're the city, the council's first citizen. You know,
Massive. That's
it's
just
the
massive.
highest honor. It's the highest honor.
Absolutely. Wow.
The highest honor. But I was, for me, it was also important, not just for me as a person, but for the African Caribbean members of the city.
Yes.
And my parents, because my
Yes.
dad did tell me that he'd never thought that he'd live to see the day.
Wow.
He was a
So
proud
both mom and dad saw you become mayor?
We lost mom 13 years ago.
Sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that.
Yes. And it was only my one regret that mom wasn't here, but my dad was there at the ceremony with me.
Extremely proud, no doubt.
Yes, he's
Wow.
a proud 95-year-old.
And you're talking about retaining your seat for however many years.
Yes.
Did you get many opposition in trying to retain?
Oh yes. They've also in the past tried to deselect me, which means they try to remove me from my seat in the past. And I think you have to have a lot of self-belief. I'm a hard worker. The constituency members also know that I work hard on their behalf, but I'm also a fair person. And I've always strived to do better and make life better for others. It's for me, it's important to volunteer and give service to others. And I just felt that they've tried to remove me on more than one occasions, and I've fought back because I am very vocal, but I always prepare, Mr. Campbell. You have to be prepared, and you can't take nothing for granted.
Yes.
We had somebody that came into my ward, and within 12 months of being there, she'd also taken a grievance out against me about me bullying her, which wasn't true, because she tried to get rid of me and obviously couldn't. So then she turned to, again, the disciplinary process. It was thrown out.
Wow.
But yes, but I just feel that in order for me to become mayor, I needed to keep my head down, work hard, and prove to the council that I was capable and competent. And so I'd been on the executive for 8 years and the longest serving female. And, there was a lot of misogyny, there was a lot of racism. But for me, you have to know yourself and, also believing that you can achieve. And that's why Dare to Dream was my, because as a 10-year-old, there was no way as a 10-year-old coming to England from Jamaica, I would have thought that I would be the first citizen of the city of Wolverhampton. So for me, it was a huge achievement for me and the African Caribbean community.
Absolutely. And I congratulate you on your tenacity.
Thank you.
Endeavor, because it's obviously nowhere near easy. A lot of struggle.
No, there's been a lot of challenges, on the way. And I think sometimes people don't realize because you don't talk about it. And it's only now that I've stopped.
Yes.
And taken a step back and step down that you're able to reflect.
Yes.
And say, gosh. And then people start to talk about what you've achieved and what you've done. And you've had time to think, oh my God, this thing almost killed me, but I'm still here. By the grace of God, I'm still here.
And some people will see you in the position that you are, different from your work in the NHS, right up to the various sort of school governors and mayor, and have no idea how you got there.
No. I think it's been easy, you see, but I couldn't have done it without the support of my family and my loving husband. We've been together nearly 50 years. It'll be 50 years that we're together, but we've been married for 43 years. But he's been very, very supportive. We were both very ambitious individuals.
Yes.
And so we wanted the same things in life, but we also both had very supportive parents. So his mom and dad was very supportive, and my mom and dad.
That's essential. That's excellent. Have you got children?
No, I don't have children. I
Okay.
have plenty of nieces and nephews who likes Auntie Sandra to take them shopping. And I think it was my 7-year-old niece that says, Auntie Sandra, because you and Uncle Carl haven't got any children, I think you should buy me a television. I can remember asking for a television for her birthday. She was 7. But no, all my sisters and my brother has children. But
Yes.
it was just a decision that Carl and I, well, it wasn't Carl and I, it was I decided that I didn't want any children. And we had a lot of falling out with his mother then. She's no longer with us. But I can remember her saying to Carl, well, if she never wants any children, why she get married? And I can remember them having that conversation. And so she used to say, Sandra's selfish, eh? Me not have no grandchildren, she used to say. And I used to say, well, I'm ambitious. And so 8 months within the marriage, I've been married 8 months, we just bought a house. I went off to Bristol because I was seconded to do a course. And I remember Carl's dad saying, tell her so she can't go. I remember it now, Mr. Campbell. And Carl says, listen, my wife has worked so hard and studied so hard. If I tell her she can't go to do this course, which means promotion when she comes back, she'll always accept me. And so, 8 months into the marriage, and I went off to Bristol to live for a year. But I came back, and within months of me returning from Bristol, after I did the theatre course, I was promoted.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it meant that I could pay a little bit more off the mortgage.
I'm talking about promotion then. I mean, this is in itself a promotion. Getting a letter from Her Majesty the Queen.
I
Queen
know.
Elizabeth II. Oh my
I
goodness.
know. How about that? What a shock. And until this day, Mr. Campbell, I don't know who nominated or recommended me.
Is that right?
That is right. Because I contacted, I don't know whether it was, I believe it's somebody within the Labour ranks, within the Labour Party, but I don't know who, because I would have thought after 40 years, it might have been from the NHS, but I suppose it's the work that I've done community-wise, because I ended up going to Downing Street also. I was invited by Tony Blair, the Prime Minister, to give me a certificate for the work I'd done within the community.
Okay.
But getting this letter, because I'd written references for others who had been nominated and put forward,
right,
for honors or awards. But when I opened it, and I had to read it twice, and I was beside myself. I had this letter in the air, and I was running around in the back garden, screaming on the top of my voice, "Oh my God!" And then I rang my husband and told him about it, and then I rang my parents, but never for a moment thought that was me. And then I realized it was for my work that I'd done in local government, but also politics, because I suppose one of the big things we'd also achieved then was transferring public health back into local government.
Right.
A portfolio.
Right. That's quite a chunk of work.
That was quite, but also setting up the new health and wellbeing boards, which was then the central government had changed legislation and started to roll out. But then I'd worked on the National Policy Forum. I was also on the Health Commission, as well as the Education Commission. So I'd done quite a lot of work, produced quite a lot of papers, assisted in quite a lot of policies, policy making, helping to form policy, look at constitutions, things like that. Because for me, I felt that if I was doing anything, I had to do it to the best of my ability. So I read a lot. I was an avid reader. When I get reports, I used to make sure those reports are read. I used to remember my officers that would work within my portfolio saying, you better make sure that's right, because Councillor Samuel, she reads everything. And
so
she
you had that reputation.
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, but you could never, even though I was so very strict as a counsellor,
Mm.
They could never, no one within the council, Mr. Campbell, could ever say I'd raised my voice at them.
Oh,
I
that's
don't
fantastic.
get angry, I get even.
So a well-deserved OBE.
Thank
So
you.
what was it like going to receive that then?
Well, going to Buckingham Palace was again an experience, and I think I pinched myself several times when I got to the gate because here we were. So my husband wanted obviously to make sure that I enjoyed the experience.
Yes, yes,
Felt,
yes.
bless him, that I'd earned it. So he'd ordered a chauffeur-driven car
Wow.
day. He booked the chauffeur-driven car for the day, and I had to decide who to bring with me. Now, my father at the time was 90, I think, or just before his 90th birthday, and I wanted Dad to be there to experience it. I'd lost
Yes.
Mom, but I wanted Dad to be there. My husband needed to be there, but also my sister Marcia, who's my older sister, who we
Okay.
traveled from Jamaica together, and we're still very close as siblings.
That's
Marcia
excellent.
had been diagnosed with
Mm.
cancer a few years before.
Mm.
And I felt I wanted to do this for her. And
Right.
so she would have something to look forward to. So
Yeah.
the day was my husband, my dad, and my sister Marcia, my older sister, who was
Fantastic.
going into hospital 3 days after the visit to Buckingham Palace for a bone marrow transplant
Really?
because she was quite ill. But I wanted her there with me.
Uh-huh.
So the day was beautiful. We'd travel down in the chauffeur-driven car. We'd arrive at Buckingham Palace. There were all these people out at the gate, but because we'd got a permit, the gate opened and our car was let into Buckingham Palace.
How good was that?
It was just, I was on such a high, and I think
Yeah.
people were, because it's not the sort of thing that happens to people like us.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, I have working class parents. I am from a
Mm.
working class background. I may have had good education, but I was brought up in a secondary school, and just did well. So it's not the sort of thing that happens to us. So,
Absolutely. Fantastic.
yes,
Yeah.
we walked into Buckingham Palace and absolutely loved it. We were guided where to go. We had to go into this room to rehearse what to do, but it was almost as if I was on cloud 11.
You were in club.
Absolutely loved it. And my
Fantastic.
father yes, it was
Fantastic.
lovely.
And I'm sure your father and your husband and your sister, they too were like on cloud
Yes,
nine.
they loved it. It was
Yeah.
all over social media once we returned. But then
Oh,
when we returned, the first place we went to when we returned from Buckingham Palace, because this was about the people around me that had supported me,
yes.
to achieve something, we went straight
Yes.
back to the Heritage Centre.
Wow. That's
Mm,
fantastic. Absolutely
yes.
fantastic.
Mm.
So you've done so much within the world of Wolverhampton. You must be a well-known lady within the Wolverhampton because I mean, you're so rooted in the community there and done so much. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
so it's nice to go into the supermarket and people say to you, "Hello, Madam Mayor," or "Hello, Councillor." Or you're walking through the streets of Wolverhampton and and even
Yeah.
now that I stood down and it's been 12 months, I am
Yeah.
the mayor. I went into Sainsbury's the other day, and the lady who was at the cash till she leaned over and she went, "Are you the mayor?" It's like that. And I was in the queue and I said,
Oh,
to be the mayor. And she says, "I thought I recognized you," she says. "Your picture's all over our pages and stuff." So
that's
yeah, it is a
fantastic.
nice feeling. But
Yeah,
then
yeah.
there is, I said to you, we returned to the Heritage Centre in Wolverhampton, and it is, one of our huge achievements as far as the African Caribbean community is concerned. And it's nice to be able to put something back, Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I've been very fortunate. I've had a good education, I've had a good life,
Mm.
and I live a very comfortable life now.
Mm.
There has been challenges, but it's a very comfortable life. And
Yes.
we must always remember we need to put back. I did a lot
Absolutely.
of volunteering over the years. You must. And that's what my mom used to say to me, you know.
Mm. And it's fantastic that you're able to
Mm,
put it out to the community what you've done because all our community need to see people like yourselves who have done
yes,
things
yes.
and know as an ambassador and a role model to know that they too can achieve.
Yes, and for young people, especially young people, you know, and that's why I used my theme was Dare to Dream, because never in a million years that I would think that as a 10-year-old coming to England, I'd end up where I have ended up. But then hard work can give you great achievements.
Yes. And talking about coming to England, I mean, I guess you've done some traveling.
Oh yes. I've done a bit of traveling. So I had to make a list 2 days ago saying, but my husband, we've been around. We've been to Jamaica several times because it's always first and foremost. So Jamaica, when we married first back in 1981, we bought a house in 1980. December 1980, we bought our first property, and August 1981, we got married. So we were like, look, we didn't have any money. We, you know, for what we were earning, we may have been qualified nurses, and my husband working. He was then working in the furnishing trade. So we'd gone to Cornwall, and when we were able to afford it, the first place we went was Cornwall to have our delayed honeymoon.
All right.
So we couldn't afford it when we got married. So we've been to Cornwall 2 or 3 times now. We've been to Portugal twice, 3 times now. We've been to Greece, been to Canada twice, been to the Canary Islands, and been to Egypt. So we've done a fair bit of traveling, but Jamaica is always my favorite place to go.
I hear that.
Yes.
Fantastic. So what ambitions have you got now going forward? I mean, you've done so much in your life. You know, have you got the future?
Yes, and I have thought about it, and I think I've been working for so long. You know, I spent 15 years in education, and I've worked for so long. But I feel very fortunate. I'm humbled by what I've achieved, and I feel that the people around me have supported me so much. And so the last 12 months, what I have done in the last 12 months is try to spend more time with family, but also try to give my husband, who is the one that manages the Heritage Centre on a day-to-day basis, which the Heritage Centre was my project.
Okay.
It was my project, but I say my project because it was my idea.
Right.
That, you know, as a co-founder, we wanted to have somewhere for our Black community, but somewhere to call home for the Black community. So my husband had retired, so we could spend more time together. But he then stepped in and you know, it is owned by 3 of us, my husband, myself, and Alicia Spence. So
that's fantastic.
3 owners, you know, and we've had it since 2012. But
I congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
And your husband and whoever else is involved.
Yes.
That means a lot.
Yes. And we needed to have a safe space for the Caribbean community. But we'd worked with the council for so long. And we initially had a Caribbean centre, but once we went into recession, the funding was pulled. So I then said, after working for 5 or 6 years, trying to raise funds to regenerate the place that they'd closed down, in the end, we said, you know what, in order for us to own something and call it our own, which is why we call it Ujamaa, because it is about generating income for our own community, that money that remains within our own community. So then we said we'd have to put our own money into this. And so 4 of us came together. Junior Hemans was part of the 4 that came together and provided our own funds. And we bought the place. We'd been looking for 2 years, came across it. But then the whole irony of it used to be the Conservative Club. I was a Labour councillor. The Express and Star made a big deal about it at the time, you know, because obviously we got Enoch Powell and his Rivers of Blood speech. And here we were in a Conservative club that up until 2012, Black people still could not visit that club. Wow. And so it was now the land, the building was owned by Black people.
Fantastic.
The people that actually comes to the Heritage Centre are Black people, and all my 7 staff are Black people.
That's fantastic. And, you know, it's other cities should learn.
Well, it's a good model. It's a good model we've got. But, you know, we couldn't have done it without the community support. When we bought the place, obviously, because we bought it and we had to increase what we paid for it to stop it becoming someone else's temple.
And I understand that.
Yes, the community chipped in. We had people come in to paint for us, people come in to help to clean up the place, to weed up the place. And then, you know, we had a lady, we used to call her, oh gosh, Mrs. Keller. Mrs. Keller said she was old and she couldn't clean, so she used to make us sandwiches and bread and bun and cheese and bring it down there in the daytime so we could have lunch.
And I'm sure it was well received.
And it was very well received. That's what I'm saying. And you're asking me, you know, what I'd like to do. I feel that it's now time. I am 67 on my next birthday, which is a few months' time. I would like to spend some time with my husband, just giving some of that time back. I'd also like to spend a bit of time, you know, visiting my family, which I have done over the last 12 months. And just spending some time, because they are the ones that suffered really and didn't see much of me. And because I was so busy doing for the community and everyone else on the Labour Party, they were the ones that got neglected. So, you know, I'd like to do at least, but I do have a job. I have a new job.
Right.
So I stood down a year ago, and last September I was approached and asked to do some public speaking.
Okay.
And so now I am on the public speaking circuit. So I've been to Manchester, I've been to Birmingham, I've been to Dudley, I've been to London 2 or 3 times, and just guest speaker at award ceremonies.
Wow.
And also I've been to Aylesbury, which I've also spoken at, again, at an award ceremony. So just, I am enjoying what I'm doing now. I am enjoying.
That's absolutely
it well.
Yeah, and you've certainly earned that sort of living. You know, because a lot of time when people retire, they don't get a chance to actually enjoy retirement.
Yes.
You know, and even though it's a job, I can see the fact that you enjoy doing that.
My mom has always told me that I was a talker. I love to talk, but I also love to read. And I think when people ask you, it's only now that I've started to talk about what I've achieved or what I've done over the years that you realize how much.
Yes.
So people want you to share your journey, but also to tell them about so I've done quite a lot of interviews, just talking through how I've achieved what I've achieved. But also you must be honest with people and tell them about the challenges as well.
Yes.
You know, and how you overcame those challenges.
Yes. Because those people that are looking up at you as a role model, they've heard that they're challenges. They've heard that you've achieved, but there are challenges within that. So they will know that they have to face challenge and have to work at it. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Well, you've certainly taken us on a journey here. Fantastic.
It's a bit of a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a journey. And I want to say thank you very much, so much for that.
Not at all. Not at all.
You know, to meet somebody like yourself in a stalwart within the community.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
It's just fantastic. Have you got any questions for the
Yes, you know, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Campbell. You know, when we had the conversation and you said you would be in touch, sometimes you do these things and you know that they don't follow through. And because I do a lot of speaking engagements, I thought, well, perhaps if I come across Mr. Campbell again and, you know, we'll catch up. I want to know, as the forgotten generation, who we owe so much to as individuals who are not necessarily born here, but have been brought up here, and we are of Jamaican descent. I want to ask what it is that I could do for the forgotten generation and the veterans of West Indian heritage.
Oh, that's a very, very, very good question. The forgotten generation exists. The main ethos of this is to promote Black history in the national curriculum.
Yes.
In the schools, so that people don't think that we only exist in October, Black History Month.
Of course, of
So
course.
that's the main ethos of the Forgotten Generations, to say that we should have this as a permanent fixture, Black
Mhm.
history is, in the
Yes,
national curriculum throughout the country or throughout UK.
yes.
And that's one of the drivers of the Forgotten Generations.
Okay.
And of course, we then looking at recording the history, recording and archiving
Yes,
history such as yours and others. And it's from whatever age, young to elderly,
yes, of course.
to actually put it out to people to say, look, we have achieved.
Yes.
We've made loads of sacrifices,
Oh
whether it's
gosh, yes. But
military
they're
or
very good at erasing our history, aren't they?
yes,
They're very good at erasing our history.
or not writing it at all.
No,
Yeah.
no. Mm.
So we must then make sure we keep the emphasis going in
Yes,
writing and publicizing and archiving our own history. So
of course.
wherever you can help the Forgotten Generations to do that,
Okay.
we will be really, really welcoming.
Yes. No, no, that would be lovely. That you would also give me an opportunity to get involved. Do you have charity status?
It's a CIC.
It's a
So
CIC.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Because what I tend to do, the reason why I've asked that, Mr. Campbell, when I do my speaking events, I have a percentage of my speaking events that I get paid for that I donate to charities. So I donate part of it to charity. I donate part of it to myself, obviously. But there are times when I feel that I don't need to take payment for it. What I tend to do, if I go into a school to do an award ceremony, I would just ask the school for expenses. I did a private school the other day, and they obviously paid me. So part of that went to to the charity. So I would like to donate, if I can, when I do my speaking events, a percentage of that I earn to yourselves, which is why I ask if you've got charity status.
Oh, that would be fantastic and most welcoming. Because as you know, when you set things like this up, it takes a lot of individual expenses.
Of course, of course.
Like get it anywhere to be recognized.
Yeah.
We need the help of the community because it is a community event.
Of course, it is. It is.
Organization. So the more that we can get people to, like yourselves, to invest in this, the
Yeah.
further.
No. I mean, I'd like to do what I can, which is why I've asked, because I've got, during my mayoral term in office, I supported 3 charities and raised funds for 3 charities, which was the African Caribbean Community Initiative, which is a mental health charity for Black people, the sickle cell center that they have in Wolverhampton. I also raised funds for them and supported them as my own charity. And then Compton Hospice. Naturally, I'm a nurse, so Compton is about the aftercare for people who are dying or have got long diseases. So I can actually put the Forgotten Generation down as one of the organizations that I would raise funds for or donate to. Another one of the question I've got here, I attempted to join this morning because I went onto the website so I could have a look to see what your vision is but I kept being bounced back. And when I attempted to become a member this morning, it just kept saying that I was encountering an error.
Okay, so there's 2 ways of becoming a member. That was the primary way, and I went on myself and noticed that there was an error because somebody told me. So I've asked that to be looked at by the developer. Yeah, so we're going to fix that. But the second way that can become a member is just by sending an email to the forgottengenerations.com, info@theforgottengenerations.com. Say that you'd like to become a member so that we don't lose anyone that's
Okay, well, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. That's fine. I can do that. So I can tick off that question. So as a mayor, I signed an Armed Forces Covenant last year for the City Council. So as Armed Forces veterans of Caribbean descent, have we, as TFG, signed an Armed Forces Covenant?
Yes, we
You
have.
have.
And if you look at the bottom of any screen, any page, you will see that we've achieved that.
Oh, wonderful. It was just something I wanted to tell you about, but obviously.
However, it's the bronze award, and we have plans to go for the silver award.
Okay.
Next.
So I'd like to help with that, if to help to promote that.
That'd be fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Okay, because I remember as the mayor signing this and hosting
yes.
the veteran as well as the present serving members in the in the mayor's parlor. So yes. I'd like to promote that, help to promote that.
Thank you very much.
To see. And I think at this stage, I just wanted to say, Mr. Campbell, it was very kind of you to invite me along to do this interview and give me that opportunity again to just talk about my journey. But also, I think things like this will help. You know, I love to work with schools. I love to work with young children. And I still do quite a bit of mentoring with the young ones. And I've just arranged a working experience for a sixth form from St. Peter's School to have a shadowing session with a barrister. So I feel that me getting the opportunity to do this when people see and I talk about what can be done and what can be achieved, it doesn't just help people of my own, I suppose, age and race, but it helps young people as well as others out there. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Absolutely fantastic. And a part of the Forgotten Generations journey is going into schools, doing talks, schools, universities, churches, whatever organization. And I regularly go up and down the country and do talks at various universities, etc.
So, yes, and you're very good at it because you were at ours the other day.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
To tell. There is just so much we have to be proud of you of, and just to say thank you because you've led this, isn't it?
Very much.
So to say a huge thank you to you.
Really appreciate it. And thank you for taking such an interest. This is really fabulous. And, you know, going forward, we'll need more people like yourselves in all our various communities. So thank you once again.
Not at all. Okay. I hope that was all right. My God. You know, every time I listen to it, I think, did I really do all that? Okay. So, Mr. Campbell, thank you so much again. Okay.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.